right. Welcome to Eclectic Soundtrax. I'm Skunk Manhattan with guest host Tim Driscoll here with me today. And our guest on this episode is recording artist, singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist ZZ Ward. Very prolific and eclectic, ZZ has been consistently releasing music since her highly acclaimed 2012 debut until The Casket drops. Each subsequent album or EP has really expanded possibilities of popular music, fusing ZZ's love of blues and roots, but with mainstream styles like pop, R&B, rock, and hip hop. ZZ has collaborated with lots of artists, including Kendrick Lamar, Freddie Gibbs, Gary Clark Jr., to name just a few. There's also remixed versions of her songs by artists like Paul Oakenfold and Joywave that is exposed her to even wider audience. And her music has been featured in numerous television and film. And we'll get more into touring talk here shortly. Obviously, has toured most recently with Slash. And recently, ZZ signed to the legendary Sun Records and has just released her latest EP entitled Mother, an intimate collection of songs that return to her blues roots with a focus on motherhood and empowerment. ZZ, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Where do we begin? Let's go back all the way. You have been singing since I believe you were about 8, and your first performance was when you were 12 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I probably sang in something when I was like younger than that, like a school choir show or something like that. But I got up and sang in my dad's blues band when I was like 12 on stage, and I sang Albert King's as the years go passing by.
That is so cool. Very cool. I love that you have that blues roots background. He had a lot of those classic records, I imagine, and that's kind of what you came upon was a lot of blues.
Yeah, that's what he kind of like right when we moved from Pennsylvania to Oregon when I was 8, and one of my older brothers, 3 years older than me, one of his friend's father was starting like a blues band, like a cover band. So my dad was like, yeah, I want to join this cover band, and so he just started like getting a lot more versed in the blues because of that. So he just did a deep dive and like was always listening to, Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson and Big Mama Thornton. I mean, Son House. The list goes on and on of just like what was being played around my house growing up. So like the blues was a definite part of my upbringing.
Well, who were some initial vocalists that inspired you to sing?
Etta James for sure. Nina Simone, Big Mama Thornton, Tina Turner. It's funny when I say Tina Turner, like I think some people know her by her like most popular music, but like
sure.
But if you learn anything about Tina, you find out that she had like such an extensive career and like had a lot of like soul and blues music that she was doing before she made it in pop music. And so she actually covered a lot of standard blues songs, and I would listen to those growing up. And so I always kind of clarify that when I say Tina Turner, because I feel like when you say Tina, like people are like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, what's love got to do with it? And they think of like, when her like big hair period and all of that stuff. And I mean,
I just think of Mad Max.
Exactly. That's what people think of, right?
I know. No, it's funny because it really is like that. You have like greatest hits, or you'll hear a big hit from an artist, and it's often just represents such a minute aspect of their catalog. And so I love like always trying to do deep dives, because you discover how eclectic so many artists actually are, and a lot of times you will find that going back, and you kind of find those quote unquote roots, right? And that back to that kind of stuff, whether we're talking about Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or Tina Turner, right? You kind of this stuff all starts from that place. Tim and I are both musicians. I'm a music teacher, and whether you're a quote unquote blues player or not, it's like, dude, you got to know the blues, man. That's the outline for so much that has come after it, right? It's just like a staple of everything to come. So it's so valid in so many ways. And so I think there's a correlation. I'm not quite sure. I think Sun Records started in I want to say like the early 50s. Was it always in Memphis? Do you know that, ZZ or Tim? I'm asking. I don't know.
It at some point moved to Nashville, but I think that was much later. I think that it like had moved to Nashville and then moved back or something. Like it definitely has like a pretty vast history of like different things.
Those
And
early rock guys, yeah.
There's also like not, I think they might be doing a documentary on it now because there's not like a lot of documentaries you can watch on. So like I remember when I was like gonna sign with them, I was like, all right, let's do a deep dive. Like I want to like know everything like more than I've ever known before about Sun Records. And then I like looked online and I was like, okay, cool. There's like a documentary on Sam Phillips. Like that's like
yeah, I think I might not have heard about that actually. And I mean, yeah, you look at those names like Elvis Presley or Jerry Lee Lewis and stuff, right? Obviously, the early 50 rockers who had all that blues inspiration and really, not that it wasn't going to get there anyway or wasn't put there by black artists, but certainly put that music in the mainstream, even more.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was a correlation with these older blues artists too, and like Chess Records possibly, right? And like guys like Howlin' Wolf, one of my personal favorites. Do you know the album London Sessions, ZZ?
I can't tell you that I've listened to that specifically, but I think that like, well, Howlin' Wolf was on. He did stuff with Chess and he did stuff with Sun too, right?
Yeah, I know that one was Chess. One of my favorite blues albums. It's so good. But yeah, and it's so congratulations on signing with them. Like what a historical. That's so cool, and it's like right up your alley, and it fits perfectly with everything that's happening with you right now. I guess just with the changes in your life, being a mother. Congratulations, by the way. I guess this is your second child, right?
It is. Yeah, it's my second child, and yeah, I think signing with Sun was it just felt perfect at this time. Like having gone in and kind of like I went in to create some new music, and I knew I wanted to go further into the blues and further into roots music and kind of just like what got me into music in the first place. And I knew I wanted to do that. And so I went ahead and did that with Ryan Spraker and started coming up with these new songs and this project before I started working with Sun. And then I got wind that Sun was interested and was like, oh my gosh, Sun Records? Like, that sounds amazing. Like, I didn't know they were around anymore. And then, like, found out that they were, like, relaunching the label. And when I talked to everybody that was relaunching it, it was like they were so passionate about it. They were like, this is exactly what we want to be, like, the new kind of resurgence of the label. And, like, it felt perfect,
Mm. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you is that obviously when or it's like when people talk about the blues, there's very much sort of like this traditionalist kind of purist side of it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like clearly you owe some debt to that, but you're also bringing in your own flavors and your own stylings. How have you sort of like kind of reconciled those two philosophies, or have you ever like kind of run into any problems or like kind of caught any flack from like the real old school people who are like, what's this kid doing with our treasured music here?
It's a fabulous question because it's so true. Like there's the purist blues and then there's like the stuff that like feels like old blues but has something fresh to it. And then it's very easy to get away from the blues, it's and move more into like soul. Like, so I totally can appreciate that question. I think that, it's interesting. Like, have I gotten, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that probably are like, that's not what I'm used to, or that's a little different than what I'm used to, I guess. But like, the way that I generally like made a lot of this new music that I've been working on is like, I make it for myself, and meaning like, I love a lot of, I won't say like I love blues. I love everything blues. I love every blues song everyone has ever done. That's not true. like like I love the blues that I love, that I grew up on, you know? And so when I'm trying to create new blues music, like I'm trying to make stuff that gets me as excited as the stuff that I grew up listening to when the bar is very high, you know?
Mm.
So that's all I can really say. I'm just trying to make music that makes me feel good, and not necessarily feel good because the blues is, you know, it can be from your suffering or your pain or whatever it is, but you know what I'm saying, just that I'm proud of, because I don't know, the moment the as soon as you start trying to please other people, then like you lose it, you know. That's what I
Right.
think.
I
Yeah.
also think it's interesting too because, you know, if you say blues artist, I mean, it's, you know, the thing about the blues is like, or with any genre, you know, to a certain degree, I suppose, it's like, you know, you can get to a point where you just sort of phone it in, right? And it's like, oh, here's another 12 blues songs that are the 1-4-5 formula. And sure, it's cool. And everybody solos for 4.5 hours and all that. You know, we've been to the open blues jams, right? And once upon a time, like that was like when I was a kid, it was like, woohoo, wow, cool. Now I'm like, dude, I'm bored. I'm bored of my own
Yeah.
solo. You know what I mean? Like I think you become more of a songwriter and a producer, and you want to craft music. And then, and obviously the other side of that is a performer, you know, putting on a performance with a band and crafting a set, crafting an album. And so, I mean, Tim and I are very much like that's the way we think, and have a, you know, broad appreciation, I think, like most artists, especially for all kinds of music. But I liked when I started kind of just diving through your catalog was that it wasn't, there's really nothing that's just like, hi, I'm ZZ Ward and here's 12 bar blues songs, right? It was like very like, yes, I hear the roots and I hear the blues influence, and I, especially in your voice and the soulful, you know, aspects of your voice, especially when you say someone like, you know, Nina Simone or something. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I hear Nina Simone and my hair on my arms just immediately stands up. You know, it's just, that is
Yeah.
just pure soul, you
It's
know?
all
Mhm.
yeah, it's something yeah, it's like that combined with like, you know, a lot of that like Bo Diddley backbeat. And then, you know, I saw an interview I think you did with Reverb years ago. You talked about like your hip hop influences, and I'm like, I knew it, because it's like
Mhm.
I would almost even say like with some of like kind of like your rhythmic hooks and like that approach. I mean, it to me. It almost makes me think almost like Lauryn Hill, you know, at least because that might be one of my reference points. But it's like it's all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things shaken up in the jar together. But
Yeah, no, and you guys are spot on. I mean, like I'm definitely Lauryn Hill, huge influence. I think that, but you know, and that in lies kind of like the challenge of trying to then take a genre like the blues, keep it alive, and also keep it fresh without changing it too much. It's like it's really interesting. I love that you guys were kind of asking about that. You know, I think about going in the studio with my producer Ryan Spraker on some of this new project I've been working on, and like we're considering all of those things, you know, when we went in together. So
But I thought it was cool. I mean, Tim and I both love 90s hip hop, you know, we're that age range. And but it's like I was hearing like hip hop stuff and guest rappers, and I mean people I've heard of, but I haven't necessarily heard a lot of music. And I thought it was kind of cool that I'm like, I'm listening to your music, not necessarily expecting like it's just going to be like this only blues or anything like that, but it caught me a little off guard, and it was like kind of cool. It works both ways. Like it's opening
mm.
me up to some guys that I have heard of or even haven't heard of. And I'm like, oh, now I'm kind of curious about maybe exploring their catalog a little more. So I think those collaborations, it's, you know, it's such an important thing, and you've really done a great job with that. I mean, you've got these huge names that you've collaborated with. Like how did something like that even come about, like Kendrick Lamar or Freddie Gibbs? Like how did those collaborations come around?
Well, I mean, when I did Till the Casket Drops, you know, I knew that I loved the blues. I knew that was a lot of who I was, but I was also kind of incorporating that with pop music and mixing it up with my love of hip hop, and my love of rap. So it was kind of trying to like straddle kind of both worlds in a way, I think. And
Hmm.
it kind of became like its own kind of genre in a way, I guess you would say, which has always been the case with that album in particular. But yeah, I mean, we just reached out to you know, I say Freddie Gibbs, right? Like we reached out to him to be on Criminal, and he was down to be on it. I was a huge fan of his. I thought he was one of my favorite rappers at the time. And we reached out to him, and I guess he was vibing with that song, and so he was down to do it. So yeah, I have been really fortunate to have some really cool collaborations though.
With that Criminal, was that an EP before? Were those songs like on an EP that then were also on the album after that, or no?
Yeah, so I think Criminal was, I think, on 11 Roses. I had put out a mixtape basically where it was like I just picked like rap songs that I really liked, and instead of like sometimes rap artists will like take a track and then like do their own verses over it. I basically did that with songs. So I like took tracks that rap artists had done, took the rappers off of them, and then like wrote blues songs over them. So that's
Okay.
yeah, and so that was about that time I put out 11 Roses. I think Criminal was probably on that before, and then we also put it on my album.
And that directly led to the collaboration with Freddie Gibbs, right? Because he heard that,
Yeah, so
or I guess he heard the EP or that song. So yeah, and then you've got guys like Paul Oakenfold, and I mean I listened to some of that too, more just remixes. I don't know if you would call it more dancey or whatever, but yeah, just really really cool. I think, especially for these days, that seems to be kind of the thing, right? You put something out, but then you have guests and remixes, and just for it's just over a decade. I mean, you've got a pretty good amount of material out there, So,
yeah.
but this new album, or new EP rather, what I've heard from this is very much like you said, and now you're kind of, it's almost like kind of feels backwards, right? Like now you've kind of done these things. You came out the gate with this really polished eclectic album, which I love, by the way. That first album is fantastic. And
Thank you.
yeah, and now it's like you're kind of going back to this more stripped down, rootsy, bluesy sound. Like I put it on earlier, and I'm just going on the keyboard, like, oh yeah, E A B, boom, right? There's our 1 4 5.
Yeah, when I put on Mother after listening to some of the other songs, I'm like immediately what struck my mind immediately was the drums, and it's like, oh, these are much more kind of organic, old school, vintage kind of sounds, maybe a little less treated or whatever. So where was that kind of coming from, that mindset?
Yeah, I mean that's what I wanted to do. I think that I've been wanting to do a project like this for a really long time, and I finally felt like I was in a place where I could just do it. I think that a lot of times when I talk to people on my team, like I'd be like, I want to, we went to further into the blues, and you could do that anytime. And I'm like, oh, if I did it now, like, um, I think that was like the trick with Mother. That song in particular was like it was like a very basic blues song, right? Like if you think of the drums and the guitar, it's like a very basic blues song. But I think therein lies the challenge of like, how do you make it unique? How do you make it special? And so, what I learned from the blues growing up was to be authentic in my story, right? Like, my story is not the same as the blues artist that I grew up listening to, but I have my pain that I can draw from and my experiences. And so, I just immediately went to my new experience of becoming a mother and what that felt like and the struggle and that and some of the resentments I had with that. And I just started writing about that. And that's what makes that song special, right? Because, or it might just be another, just basic blues song, right? But I think what makes it special is that it's real and that it has emotion and that it's honest.
Oh, and yeah, how many people are going to relate to that? Exactly. And you can tell for sure. I wanted to ask you about being a mother now and having children. How has this affected touring? How much time did you have to take off? How extensively have you toured throughout your life? Like, just tell us a little bit about that aspect of everything.
Yeah, I toured a lot. I would say I'm a touring artist primarily. Like, I guess because of my ability to be able to play live and sing live, that thankfully, thank goodness, there will always be a demand for that, I think. Thankfully, with the rise in social media and things like that, it's kind of scary, but I think people want to go see live music. And so that's kind of where a lot of my time has been spent over the last 12 years. Now that I have two boys, I bring them on the road with me, and it's a different experience, and it's a lot of fun. But even going from like one kid to two kids is like is different as a switch. And you know, it's great. You just really have to find a lot of balance, and you need help. You can't do it by yourself. And I think the biggest lesson I've probably learned is that when I have my kids, I'm not working. Like that's like the one thing that I really had to learn, because I remember like when I first had my son, my oldest, I was like, oh, I'll just like have him sleeping in the studio and I'll just be like writing. And then I was like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
acceptance. Like this is not going to work. And so that's why like anytime I'm gonna write or if I'm gonna be on stage, it's like whoever's got my kids, like I am not getting off that stage unless it's an emergency. You know what I mean? Like that is like you just have to prioritize like where your time is. And that also flips the other way. Like when I'm with my boys, I want to be with my boys. I don't want to be on my phone or posting something, you know, like a little bit I have to, but like for the most part, like I want to be with them. So,
Right.
yeah.
Uh, uh, I guess they might not be at the age yet to sort of have a sense of like who mom is and what she does for a living and sort of like what what are your thoughts on that? Like, I guess have they had any kind of a talk about that yet or no?
No, not really. And like for the most part, like I feel like I'm only famous at my shows, which is kind of nice, right? Like I think I live in LA, so it's like there's celebrities here that are like celebrities, and I don't feel like I'm a celebrity. I'm like me and my husband have decided that I'm more famous, where it's like if I'm at a show and I have fans that come to a show, everybody knows who I am. But but no, I think my son, you know, my son's almost 4, so he doesn't really he doesn't really understand that yet, but also I don't know. I have a funny feeling he's not going to think it's that big of a deal, because I don't think it's that big of a deal. I've just gotten so used to it that it's not like something that like it just feels like what I signed up for, right? It's like I share my art with people and people are excited about it. And so I would imagine he would kind of just have the same outlook on it. Like at least that's what I'll try to teach him, you know?
Your timing was, I guess, pretty good with having children, because if you were heavily touring 4 years ago, that would have stopped anyway. So I
Well, it
wonder.
did. Well, it did actually. It's interesting you would say that. I was on
Yeah.
tour when we stopped. So we were on tour and we were on tour and it just things started canceling, and I remember like calling my booking agent and being like, are we like still gonna do this tour? And he was like, yes, it's on, it's on, it's on. And then I got a call the next day
Yes.
that was like,
Yes.
Live
That's how it
Nation is
was.
yes, Live Nation is shutting down everything,
That's
you
how
have to
quick
go
it
home.
was. It was
Yep.
crazy.
That
Yeah.
was even yeah. I think at the time I had gigs on like consecutive weekends at the same club here in town. It was like in one weekend, it's like that's what everyone was talking about at the show, and people were like weird about touching each other, and some people were cracking jokes. And then like 3 days later, it's like, okay, well the next weekend's canceled, and boom, like just someone, you know,
It
just
was
flooded with
crazy.
I'm
gigs.
assuming you
Yeah.
were on tour in the US, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
me,
at
thank
least,
God.
yes, right? Because I know, yeah, I know people that were stuck overseas for months. I mean, things were just such a mess, and wherever people ended up being, whenever the world shut down, literally within a few days, it was kind of crazy. So, so
I
at that
know,
time,
it's nice.
your son had been born, or not yet? It was in
Not yet.
2020.
I basically went
Oh,
home and
wow. Okay.
I was home for like I think a month or two. And I knew I like wanted to have kids, but like I think I had like I felt like I had a tour coming up with somebody big. I was really excited about it. Like we were like, "Oh, we'll wait till after that and whatever to try to have some kids." We were home for like a month and then we were just like, "Ah, screw it." Like what do? Like when
Right.
is the world coming back? We were like, "Oh, we'll try." And then we were like,
Yeah.
"Okay, we're pregnant."
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
speaking of, I just wanted to mention your husband, Kid Bogart. Is that correct way to say it?
Yeah, I mean Evan. His name is Evan. Evan
Okay.
Kid Bogart. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Evan Kid.
But he goes by Evan
So
Kid, yeah.
yeah, you can. Okay. So wow, what an impressive resume. So how long have you known each other? And I'm assuming, I think I read something about this and I can't remember what the context was, but you worked together initially, and did that just sort
Mhm.
of flourish into a romance, or how did all that come about?
Yeah, I met Evan a long time ago. I met Evan like almost 15 years ago now, I think, and which is crazy to say. But yeah, we started working together first. I had shared all my songs at the time with him. And he started working with me and setting up a lot of writing sessions for me to go in with a lot of different songwriters. I would go in with all these writers without him. I would go in and write with other people and stuff like that. And then I would always send my songs to Evan, and Evan was, a champion of me and my music. And then, yes, at some point that became a romance.
Hmm.
And yeah, we've obviously been, gotten married since, but we've also continued to work with each other professionally. And I think that that was a good grounds to start a relationship on in some ways, because I feel like we have a lot of mutual respect for each other and each other's gifts and things like that. So,
Well, and the deal, like it's this is what you guys both do. The industry you're both in. There's no, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, and I love this so much. And then it's like, well, wait, this sucks. You're on the road all the time. That's like,
Yeah.
you know what it is getting into it.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
that's very true.
So what is next for you, ZZ? Tell us about the upcoming tour and a little bit more about the record. Just what's going to be happening. Where can people find you over the next few months for the rest of the year? What do you got going on?
Yeah, so we have the Dirty Sun tour coming up in November. I'm going out for 3 weeks, I think, and that's going to be fantastic. We're going to play a lot of new songs and some of my songs that people might know me for as well. But I've got a lot of plans for that being a really great tour. So they can snag tickets on my website. There's also VIP packages that we've kind of planned where people can get to meet me and things like that. That's all available on my website. And then we have a lot more touring set up for 2025 and a lot more music that's going to be released.
These are all U.S. dates coming up here, I'm assuming, for
Yes.
the remainder of this year. Are you planning on doing anything international next year?
We don't have plans for that now. I don't know. We just, it's costly, I will say. It's
Yeah,
costly.
right.
It's costly enough trying to tour in the US. So I think international, it's just even a little bit more challenging. I had gone overseas one time and did a tour. I opened for Alan Stone like 12 years ago, and I got to go to a
Okay.
bunch of different countries, and that was really cool. But since then, honestly, I just have not done a lot of international. It's not that I don't want to, or they don't,
Yeah.
I hear fans all the time
Tim and I
telling
would
me
be
over
doing it
there.
if we could afford it.
You know,
It's definitely,
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's not cheap, but it's
No.
exciting. It's cool.
Yeah.
So zzward.com, is that the website when people go
Yeah.
get tickets, check out your new music?
Yeah, absolutely. zzword.com, and they can get all that stuff there. And then obviously anywhere they stream music, they can stream the new EP. So,
All right, all the usual Facebook, Instagram, I guess. Are you doing you'll soon enough, I guess you'll be doing TikTok dances with your kids, right? So
oh no, I will not.
you can
I
get
will
hip on
never
that
be
platform.
you will never catch me doing TikTok dances. I try to be on TikTok, but it's a little bit, I don't know, it makes me feel old, only because
I know, it's so weird.
well, it's only because I do feel like I just don't want to sit there and scroll through videos over and over again of and just be sucked into my phone. Like life is in front of me off my phone as well. So I was that's all. I'm from a different generation, and
Same.
I think it's great, that some people are into it, but sometimes I'll hear older people that are even older than me that'll be like, I actually really like TikTok, and I'm like, that's great, good for you. I'm glad you have time to sit around and watch it all the time.
I do feel weird, and I know that happens because I will get on social media to be like, all right, I need to post this thing. I'm going to do this thing. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, wait, why am I looking at zoo animals again? You know what I mean? Just completely
No, it's
distracted.
crazy.
Like you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, wait, what was I doing? Yeah. So you got to really know how to get in and get out. And anyone who has people who run their social media, I'm like, God bless you. You are so lucky. Like,
yeah. Who are those people? I want help with that.
Right. So you actually do your social media, huh? Like you get
I do.
5 seconds when the kids are taking a nap. I got to do my social media now.
Yeah, I do. And I've had other people help me with it before, but to be honest, they don't do that great of a job. They just don't, because it's not you saying it. So it just seems like it's
exactly
just generic. So I always think it's funny when fans will be like, is this really you? I'm like, yeah, it's really me.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's super cool, actually, because
Yeah.
I mean, especially like you said earlier, right off the bat, it's just that your story is your story and the authenticity behind it. And I mean, granted, like, there's got to be a firewall and an artist can't respond to everybody and have time for all that. But the fact that even that you're making the post and you're, in a personal
Trying.
way engaging with fans,
Yeah.
like that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I've got one last question. So we said, we talked a little bit earlier about how, you toured with Slash over the summer. Did you guys ever trade hats at any point?
Ha, that's really funny. No one's asked me that. No, we did not trade hats, but like, he wears a couple different hats though, right? So like the time that I
assume
was good. Well, I won't say the time that I met him because I met him a few different times and he had different hats on both times. He had his top hat on one time and then the other time he had a baseball cap on because he wears both. But no, we never traded hats. So that's really funny.
I want to, since you're not actually on camera, I do want to touch on that topic real quick. Tell us about your signature fedora. How did that come about?
When I was a kid, I would like go on stage to sing and I would be really nervous. So I would like have tremors when I was on stage. And so and my dad was like wearing a fedora in his blues band to be like Muddy Waters. And so I like popped on a fedora one day and like that became my cape to make me feel kind of like stronger than I was. And that's kind of always how it's been. So
cool. And that's just became your look, your image.
There you go.
Anything you want to plug outside of what we already have? That I leave anything out? Anything
No,
else
I
before
think
we
it's
head out of
great.
here?
We talk about the tour and the new EP, so I'm good.
Awesome.
Thank
and
you so much.
ZZWard.com, right? Nice and simple. All right, everybody go there. Go get your tickets. See ZZ Ward on tour. She is awesome. And I'm lucky enough to have already heard the new EP, which is killer. Great job on that, ZZ. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay,
You as well.
bye.
Bye. All right, that was ZZ Ward, and this is Skunk Manhattan with Tim Driscoll, my guest host for the day. Signing off. Wow, this is like the shortest podcast we've ever done. Feels almost like it's pro, doesn't it, Vic? I called you Vic. Tim.
I'm the
Tim
substitute.
Driscoll.
I'm the
substitute teacher of podcasting.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Until next time. Take care. See you then.